over the last 15 minutes Q&A session, we already received numerous questions both for Alexander as well for Maite de Vries. I will start then with the first question that we received, which is this one. In e-financing, what is missing to move from asset-based loans to project saving-based loans? For example, to get EPCs off the ground in Asia. An example brought by our audience is this one. Are standard financing protocols, including M&B protocols, needed? Thank you very much, Alexander, for answering.
Well, thank you very much, Giorgio, for that question. I've been in ESCO sector development in the last 14, 15 years, and what I've seen is, in the first few years, it's okay to equip the sector with the technical capacities, and monitoring and verification protocol is very, very important. How do you get in getting accredited energy managers in the market, for example, raising awareness and public education? But I think it's time to move on. And while we continue developing technical capacity to bridge that gap, I think in the more mature markets where ESCOs are starting to exist, we should develop now the financial capacities of ESCOs. And I think that's the emphasis, that should be the emphasis of many governments, of many financial institutions, of many ESCO associations. While on one hand we develop the protocols, the technical capacities, the competencies, how do we, I will borrow the word, re-engineer ESCO so that they provide themselves the financial capacity to recapitalize their project portfolios? So how do it's a double-sided question. How do you arm banks and leasing companies with technical capacities? And I will flip that question around. How do you make ESCOs? How do you equip them with the financial capacities? So it's really about moving away now and building on the technical capacity, technical assistance that has been very traditional in the last decade or so. But it's really about now, how do you improve access to finance for many of these technology companies and ESCOs? That is the key strategy and the key gap to fill in the next few years.
Thank you, Alex. On this last point, we also received a question with specific relations to Nepal, asking if ESCO can play a vital role in enhancing of SMEs of countries exactly like Nepal.
Well, thank you for the question. On Nepal, there are many nascent markets. Not only Nepal, but there are many nascent markets for ESCOs. When I say nascent, there's still very few ESCOs. They're still traditionally energy consulting, energy management consultants, but they have no experience on doing, let's say, shared savings, performance contracting. They're very, very low competencies on, let's say, M&B protocol. They have no access to finance. So in very nascent markets like Nepal, the focus should be, yes, to answer the question, yes, ESCOs will eventually play a very, very big role in generating pipeline. I think it's paramount that in the next few years, we should continue to develop capacities in the ESCO sector of such nascent markets. We should even consider importing or borrowing from the rest of South Asia, for example, ESCOs in the region, or maybe from Southeast Asia, and then continue and building the sector, getting them to, for example, generate pipeline projects for Nepali banks. So I think in the next few years, the ESCOs will anticipatedly not play a significant role in ramping up, but I think there should be equal emphasis on developing ESCO capacities in such nascent markets, both initially technical, then as the market matures, on the financial capacity of such ESCOs. But ultimately, yes, most of developing Asia should have ESCOs and performance contracting and EPCs play a big role in rolling out energy efficiency finance.
Thanks a lot. There is also another question. So in your opinion, how aware are the large-scale industry in Southeast Asia in energy efficient as a subject in general and technology? How aware are them?
It really depends. You know, many development agencies and governments, you know, in Indonesia, they have made for exporters and for large state-owned enterprise, they made energy audits mandatory. There have been a lot of, let's say, German grant money, for example, going through textile sector in Bangladesh, for example, again doing a resource efficiency and energy audits. In ADB and IFC, of which I've worked with, there were a lot of technical assistance grants to do energy audits in cement and steel industries in Vietnam. So in certain pockets, the energy audits are already there. There is awareness. Management of these enterprises are already aware. It doesn't cut across all markets, but there are certain energy-intensive, large-scale industries that are already armed with preliminary energy audits, if not investment-grade energy audits. Where is the gap now? Now that there's already this medium to high level of awareness, I think we should not stop at just awareness building. We should not just stop at just creating energy audits. It's understanding now what is the barrier for internal investment decisions within the enterprise, within the large-scale industry. So I think the biggest battle is between the chief engineer of an industrial enterprise and the CFO. Because if the chief engineer said, let's replace the boiler, it's bankable, the chief finance officer will say, oh yes, you've made your case, but it's priority number 57. Because I have to use my available credit lines, I have to use my available cash on hand for raw materials, etc., etc. The second reason the CFO will put it the priority number 57, it's because new equipment would mean new capex. And new capex means new depreciation, new everything. So it's a threat to the short-term bottom line of the enterprise. So the key there is, how do you get a third party like an ESCO to do off-balance sheet financing? Not even a bank loan, because a bank loan will there will be a debt service, and that would be again a threat to the bottom line. So to make the long answer short, I would say, after raising awareness, where awareness is already high, work on making energy efficiency a priority by looking at off-balance sheet financing solutions for these enterprises.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for your very, very analytical answer. There is a question which maybe could also be interesting for Maite, which is if there are any example of this as which could inspire SMEs and the financial institutions to invest in the same. Maite?
Yes, thank you, George.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm back on. Okay, good. Yes, I think indeed what we've also seen in Meet Vietnam and what we're also going to do in Meet Cambodia is that what we call case studies, so examples of small and medium enterprises or other companies investing in energy efficiency is really important to convince other SMEs about it. It's one thing if a supplier claims some kind of efficiency or if I as a project claim it, but it's much more convincing if one of their peers convinces them. So what we've also been doing in Vietnam and will be doing here is develop a lot of case studies, so both on paper and in video productions, which shows the examples of other SMEs investing in energy efficiency and their experiences with it. That is usually combined with an energy audit, so that you also have an independent party certifying the actual energy savings. I can direct you to our website for some of the case studies and video that are still online. And to explain them here would be a bit much, but they are definitely there.
Sure. Thank you very much. In any case, the participants will have all your contacts and all the details of the website very, very soon. There is another question that maybe is focused just on the intervention of Alexander, asking if there are any example of CDM-based projects using crowdfunding, and if you can comment on that.
I think that would be for Mr. Zhang to better answer.
Mainly, yes.
Yes, but I would say I'll just make the general comment that when the carbon markets, where the carbon markets are slow, I think that the market has seen that energy efficiency can survive in spite of the slow entry of carbon markets. So how it affects mainstream finance, there will be an effect because CDM would certainly accelerate. They provide the additionality, but how it affects crowdfunding, I think that would be for Mr. Zhang to better answer. But thank you for directing the question to me.
Thank you very much. While we continue with the other questions, please let me recall to the participants that if they want to share their experience, they can do it raising their hand on the top left of the screen. There is a small figure of a man with a hand raised. If you would like, please just contact us through this method. We still have some questions for Alexander at the moment. How do you see the emerging role of non-banking financial institutions as the region aspires to scale up green finance?
Thanks again for the question. Oh, I see if my predictions are correct, I see a much larger role for non-banking financial institutions. Why? Because they will be able to roll out financial products and services that are more specialized towards green projects, towards energy efficiency, towards resource efficiency, towards water efficiency, towards local environment. Much of green projects are still not going to be mainstream banking. So even in the next 10 years, the big banks will have energy efficiency lending, but it will be a tiny portion of their portfolio. For this to achieve scale, the leasing companies, the ESCOs, the other non-banking financial institutions, special purpose vehicles, and investment funds will definitely play a huge role in achieving scale for green finance.
Thanks a lot. We have another question saying that our participant is seeing that your proposed models have energy service companies and technology providers partnering with national financial institutions. Is this really necessary? Cannot, for example, the banks and leasing companies merely develop their in-house green technology expertise?
Well, when I was working with the IFC, we worked and cooperated with the large banks in China and in Southeast Asia and South Asia in developing capacities, and you can only push it to a certain limit. That their willingness, number one, they're willing to get, let's say, an energy efficiency and renewable energy expert, but not on the bank payroll. It will have to be an outsourced consultant on a per project evaluation basis. So it's not an organic in-house capacity. It's still an outsourced service. And why? Because that's an additional expense for them. It's additional overhead, and that will only increase the spread or the operating spread between their cost of money and the lending that they will ultimately roll out. So it's not a sustainable long-term objective. It's not a reasonable expectation for banks to employ, to have full-time energy efficiency, renewable energy expertise, no matter how big the bank is. Now, there are a few exceptions. When we work with Industrial Bank in China, they have now a sustainability center. And these are just a few exceptions because of their sheer size. But the traditional, the more medium-sized bank will not be able to follow suit. So you will see that the banks will have to depend on partnerships and co-marketing agreements with companies that have the know-how, like ESCOs and the energy technology providers, and they will create the marketing agreements that can be tied up with them. They need not enter into full finance performance contracting, but it could just be co-marketing where the energy efficiency service company or technology provider will generate a steady pipeline of loans or leases for the financial institution. So yes, my prediction is the market will still have to depend on partnerships with technology and service companies like ESCOs if it wants to scale up green finance or energy efficiency finance.
Thank you very much. We have also an interesting question from Bhutan, from our participant from Bhutan. How can Bhutan launch a nationwide program on resource efficiency, SCP, based on its development philosophy of gross national happiness?
Very interesting question. I don't know whether Mighty would like to pitch in, but I would say that, you know, green finance is not immediately like there are certain aspects of green finance that don't have full commercial returns, right? Or very long returns like renewable energy and resource efficiency. Water efficiency, for example, has still very, very long paybacks. So if you have other growth objectives, if an economy like that of Bhutan that values happiness more than financial prosperity, then maybe yes, green finance could be a priority because you're now evaluating investments and financial vehicles on the basis of what's closer to your national objective. So if gross national happiness matters to you more than paybacks and profitability of financial institutions, then it might have a chance in such market.
That's great. Maite, would you like to add something?
Thank you, Giorgio. I'm not sure if I have much to add, but I'll give my opinion on it. I think indeed what Alexander has already explained is very true. If you look at specifically renewable energy, but also energy efficiency, one of the main aims is, of course, to improve the environment, to make sure that there is less CO2 or that CO2 emissions are reduced. And in the end, that will lead to more happiness, especially if you're in a mountainous country like Bhutan, which has such a nice clean air already, and you want to keep it that way. So if you have too much CO2 coming in, that all changes. So energy efficiency and renewable energy are definitely a way to keep the country clean and therefore keep its people more happy.
Thank you very much, Maite, and thank you very much, Alexander. Thank you to both of you for your kind answers. We are now coming towards the end of our webinar. We would like to inform you that we received the authorization, and taking this occasion to thank them, the authorization from the speakers to download their presentation. You will receive such after having answered to a brief poll that you will see soon on the screen. Let now welcome again Dr. Hugo Weber, the team leader at Switch Asia Network Facility, for his final remarks.
Yeah, thank you. It was a very interesting webinar indeed for me as well. And regarding